As airlines cut more and more routes, the industry is asking governments around the world to do whatever they can to help. The EU is putting forward legislation to temporarily change airport rules so that airlines don't have to operate flights just to keep the right of the takeoff and landing. It's called the slot. The EU Commission President says it should help relieve pressure.
We want to make it easier for airlines to keep their airport slot, even if they do not operate flights in those slots because of the declining traffic. This is a temporary measure, and this temporary measure helps both our industry, but it also helps our environment.
Now, slots and slot rules. The slot, the right for a plane to take off and land at a particular airport, it's now, particularly at what's known as slot congested airports like Heathrow, Paris, Frankfurt and Kennedy. It's very lucrative. Those slots are worth a lot of money, but they are a logistical nightmare. Now, this explains it for you. Every one of these airplanes has a slot, okay? It is the right to take off and land at that airport. You have to have it before you can operate. The slot is for a time. It's not for a route. It's not for an particular type of aircraft. It simply gives you the right to take off and land. The problem is, of course, at the moment, the way in which there's simply no one travelling. You see, if you don't take off and land, for 80% of the season, you lose the slot in the next season, summer or winter. And so airlines are saying, well, hang on a second, there are no passengers, so we're cancelling flights. But if we cancel the flight for any length of time, we won't be able to have the slot. We'll lose the slot. It might have cost them tens of millions of dollars. And so you have what they call these ghost flights. Virgin Atlantic has admitted it's running planes from A to B almost empty just to keep the slot. There have been other cases where the airline has changed and just run a little plane, as little as they can, from A to B, not the big run, to make sure that they keep the slot. The IATA chief called ghost flights economically insane.
What we have asked them is to do that quickly and to include in this waiver the summer season. So that is the heart of the discussion, because we think that it will last up to September, at least in Europe. And second, but I don't expect that the airline will continue, to fly empty aircraft only to maintain the slots. Economically, it's insane.
Thomas Reynaert is in Brussels. He is the Managing Director of Airlines for Europe, A4E. Good to see you, as always, sir. So has the airline industry got the relief required so it can cancel and not run flights, but not risk losing the slots at major airports like Heathrow?
Well, good evening, Richard. The European airlines, the CEOs last week, we sent a letter to the European Commission asking exactly that, what Alexander just referred to. And we are quite hopeful that by tomorrow, the European Commission will publish its proposal to review the slots regulation, which should ideally give us what we've been asking for.
Why is this so difficult? Why can't the regulator just simply say, yep, this makes perfect sense, suspended for 3 months, or suspended for the summer season?
Well, first of all, we need to prove that this is about an extraordinary circumstance before we would get a temporary waiver. So extraordinary circumstances is certainly it, the current situation, and a temporary waiver. So we have to prove as airlines with data as much as we can to the European Commission and the slot coordinators, because they, of course, they will have to allow this waiver as well at the end of the day. We need to come up with the right evidence and the proof. And so that's taken a couple of days at least to come forward with that. But I think I'm quite confident we delivered sufficient evidence by now for the Commission to come forward with a decent proposal.
Right. The situation for airlines at the moment, how bad is it? You heard me probably just talk about the US guys. How bad and how great do you think the downturn is for European carriers?
Well, certainly with, I mean, every day the situation changes, but certainly since yesterday with Italy putting the entire country on quarantine, it doesn't make it easier. So we are following the situation day by day, and we hope that, of course, the whole situation crisis in Europe will be over as soon as possible. That's why we think a temporary waiver would be sufficient, but we hope to have a waiver that is at least active throughout the summer period.
Sure, you're going to get the waiver. I'll almost put money on it that the waiver will be granted. But if we talk about the bottom line for European airlines, how bad is it going to be?
Well, the latest estimates from last week, normal worst case analysis, it could be up to $44 billion of revenue losses. So that's the latest figures. So it's bad enough.
And do you expect, I mean, Flybe has already gone under. Do you expect other, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to name them, but do you expect other European airlines to fold during this crisis?
Well, Richard, as you know very well, the airlines business, our business is very cyclical, it's very cost-driven, and anything that adds to the costs is a challenge, I would say, certainly for the smaller airlines. I can't give you any names, but this is exactly why we need the European Commission to take urgent action together with the member states to alleviate the costs somehow. There are some things that can be done. The slots waiver is one of them.
And the other ones you want, I suppose you would like relief on taxes, APD in the UK, all of these, you'd like some relief there?
Well, there are some national measures, so as taxes, aviation taxes, and certainly as APD, which is the heaviest one in Europe, with more than 3 billion euros of taxes every year that the airlines are paying the UK government. But we would certainly be asking for the European Commission member states to seriously reconsider any future aviation taxes of which they've been talking for the last couple of months.
Good to have you, Sir Thomas. Thank you. Nice to have you with us on tonight's programme from
Thank you, Richard.
Brussels.
Bye-bye.